Welcome to another quiet journey into the past. Tonight, we will wander into the world of samurai-era Japan, a land of misty mountains, wooden castles, and lantern-lit streets where the rhythm of life was slow and deliberate. You will hear the faint rain as it falls against tiled rooftops, the creak of wooden floors inside paper-walled houses, and the soft rustle of robes as men and women carried out their daily lives in the shadow of the samurai. If you love calm videos like this, make sure to subscribe and comment where you are watching from. I read and interact with all of your comments, and it is always wonderful to know where in the world you are listening. Now settle into your chair or bed, let your breathing slow, and allow me to guide you through samurai era. Japan, not through the battles and blood, but through the quiet details of daily living, the architecture, the food, the rituals, and the calm beauty of a world that shaped centuries. Imagine yourself stepping into Japan during the height of the samurai era, perhaps in the 16th or 17th century. The air is cool in the morning, carrying the faint smell of wood smoke from hearths that burn within wooden homes. Villages are quiet except for the steady rhythm of farmers working in the fields, bent over rice paddies that shimmer with reflected light. The samurai class oversees much of this world, bound by the strict code of Bushido, a way of life that emphasizes loyalty, honor, and discipline. Yet daily life is not only about war or swords. It is filled with simple, steady routines. Wooden sandals shuffle against packed dirt paths. Children practice writing characters on small boards with brushes, while women carry baskets of vegetables gathered from kitchen gardens. Merchants walk along narrow roads, balancing goods strapped across their backs or carried by pack animals. Around them, the architecture is humble but elegant, sloping tiled roofs, sliding doors of wood and paper, and lanterns that glow at dusk. For the common people, life is often demanding. Farmers rise before dawn to tend the rice, carpenters plane wooden beams with rhythmic precision, and potters shape clay that will be fired into vessels for storage and trade. In contrast, samurai households are focused on duty, training, and discipline. A samurai may begin his day with sword practice, drawing his katana in fluid, deliberate motions, then spending time in meditation or calligraphy. The stillness of ink on paper and the quiet balance of brush strokes are just as important as combat because they embody inner control. The land is peaceful on the surface, yet always prepared for conflict. The samurai's presence, dressed in layered robes with swords at their side, is a reminder that their world rests on a balance of order and vigilance. The sound of bamboo rustling in the wind, the cry of a distant crow, or the soft clatter of wooden shutters all create a rhythm of life that feels both fragile and enduring. It is a world of duty, serenity, and structure, where each person knows their role, and the cycle of days continues under the watchful eyes of mountains and temples. Beyond the surface of daily life, the heart of the samurai world is Bushido, the way of the warrior. This was not simply a set of rules, but a guiding philosophy that shaped their lives in both peace and conflict. At its core, Bushido emphasized honor, loyalty, respect, courage, and self-discipline. A samurai was expected to live with dignity and integrity, to serve his lord without hesitation, and to protect those under his care. Imagine a samurai seated quietly in a dimly lit room, a paper lantern casting a warm glow across wooden beams. He meditates on loyalty to his clan, reflecting on how every action, every word, must align with duty. The katana resting beside him is more than a weapon. It is the soul of the samurai, treated with reverence, kept polished and sharp, as much a spiritual object as a tool of defense. Bushido extended beyond battle. It shaped how one treated others, how one carried themselves in public, even how one accepted misfortune. To live without honor was considered worse than death, which is why the image of the samurai is so deeply tied to discipline and sacrifice. Yet this way of life also cultivated a certain calmness. The focus on restraint, humility, and balance created a society where respect was embedded into everyday gestures. A bow, a carefully chosen word, or the quiet patience of a warrior who knows that strength is not only in the blade, but in the spirit. The teachings of Bushido echoed into art and culture. Poetry, tea ceremonies, and calligraphy were not distractions, but extensions of discipline. Every stroke of a brush, every measured sip of tea, reflected the same principles as the stance of a swordsman. It is in this duality of fierce warrior and quiet poet that the true essence of the samurai comes alive. Their lives were built on the idea that calmness and strength are not opposites, but companions. In this world, the sound of the wind through pine trees or the sight of a temple gate framed against the evening sky carried just as much meaning as the clash of steel. Bushido was not only a code of battle, but a philosophy of living with purpose, humility, and inner harmony. As the rain outside continues to fall gently, let us step deeper into the world of the samurai, beyond the armor and the battlefield. At the very heart of their existence was something called Bushido, often translated as the way of the warrior. But it was not simply about fighting. It was a philosophy, a way of life that guided every decision, every action, and every breath a samurai took. Bushido placed loyalty, honor, and discipline at its core. A samurai was expected to serve his lord with complete devotion, no matter the cost. His word was binding, his promise unbreakable. Imagine living each day knowing that your reputation and the respect of your peers rested not on wealth or possessions, but on how faithfully you lived by this code. In many ways, it was both freeing and heavy, a balance between strict duty and the quiet dignity of self-control. Daily life reflected this. A samurai did not only train for war. He studied poetry, calligraphy, and philosophy. Many carried small books of verse tucked inside their robes, ready to write down fleeting thoughts under the cherry blossoms or beside a quiet stream. It is said that true strength was measured not in the force of a sword, but in the calmness of spirit that carried the warrior through life's challenges. One can imagine the scene, a samurai seated in a tatami-floored room, the paper sliding doors softly shut against the outside world. A candle flickers as he reads aloud a poem he has composed, his voice steady, his mind clear. For him, art and battle were not opposites, but companions, both requiring precision, focus, and balance. The rain on the roof seems to echo the rhythm of his thoughts, blending seamlessly with the sound of his breath. To follow Bushido meant living a life of restraint. Meals were simple, conversations were deliberate, and actions, above all, were purposeful. It was a path of harmony within discipline, calmness within strength. Now let us step into the world outside, to the towering castles where lords and samurai gathered. These fortresses were more than military structures. They were symbols of power, culture, and order. Picture the winding stone walls, designed not only for defense but to slow the pace of anyone approaching, forcing a visitor to walk in curves rather than straight paths. Even the design of space reflected discipline and strategy. Inside the castle walls, life had a rhythm of its own. Samurai patrolled the grounds, their footsteps steady against gravel paths. Servants carried food and supplies to different quarters. Children of noble families learned both martial skills and refined arts. In the great halls, lords held meetings, their words echoing through wooden beams while attendants knelt silently, awaiting commands. The castle was also a center of calm order. Gardens were carefully arranged to mirror nature in its most balanced form. Stones were placed deliberately, moss encouraged to grow in patterns that looked timeless. Koi ponds reflected both the sky and the walls around them, reminding those who looked upon the water of the balance between fragility and permanence. Yet, daily life for a samurai within these walls was not filled with constant battle. Much of it was patience, waiting, and quiet readiness. A warrior might spend days in training, refining the same sword movement again and again, or practicing calligraphy strokes until his brush flowed like water across the page. Discipline meant that even in stillness, there was purpose. At night, the castle grew quiet. The sounds of footsteps faded, and only the soft hum of insects or the distant patter of rain against stone filled the air. In these moments, samurai reflected, meditated, or shared tea in hushed gatherings. Strength was found not in constant action, but in the ability to endure silence. Bushido was alive not only on the battlefield, but also in the stillness of castle life, in the respect shown to superiors, in the quiet bow between equals, and in the grace of an unspoken code. As we drift further into the quiet world of samurai Japan, let us step away from the battlefield and into the home. For even the most feared warrior had moments of stillness, evenings where the sword was set aside and life unfolded within the wooden walls of a humble dwelling. Imagine approaching a samurai household during the Edo period. The house is built of timber, the wood darkened by time, with a simple gate that opens into a narrow pathway of packed earth. Sliding paper doors, known as shoshi, filter in soft light from the outside, casting gentle patterns across the polished tatami mats within. The air smells faintly of rice straw, cedar, and the faint smoke from an iron kettle warming water for tea. Inside, life is modest but ordered. A samurai family did not live in luxury, but in discipline and quiet restraint. At the center of the home, the hearth glows faintly, a pot simmering slowly as the fragrance of miso soup and grilled fish lingers in the air. The sound of a bamboo ladle dipping water from a clay jug is the background rhythm of the evening, steady and calming. The samurai himself may be seated formally in seiza, the traditional kneeling posture, while reading from a worn scroll or writing with brush and ink. His children sit nearby, practicing calligraphy or quietly listening to stories of loyalty and honor from generations past. The wife, graceful and composed, moves silently between her tasks, preparing food or tending to the small household altar. Despite the warrior's reputation, within the home, tenderness and care also had a place. The family was considered the heart of stability, and to fail in one's household duties was seen as dishonorable as failing in combat. The flickering glow of an oil lamp throws shadows on the walls as the night deepens. Outside, the soft sound of crickets mingles with the occasional bark of a village dog. Inside, the samurai family rests, bound by tradition, quiet discipline, and the shared sense that their way of life was not just for themselves, but for the order of society as a whole. It is a peaceful scene, yet one sustained by strict roles and endless duty. A life where serenity and structure were inseparable, and every breath seemed to carry the weight of history. No part of samurai life can be spoken of without returning to the sword. More than a weapon, the katana was the living soul of the warrior. To touch it carelessly was unthinkable, for to own one was not merely possession, it was reverence, a sacred bond between human and steel. Picture a samurai seated in his quiet chamber. Before him rests his katana upon a sword stand, the lacquered scabbard gleaming faintly in the dim light. He bows his head slightly before touching it, for to hold the blade was to touch something spiritual, a symbol of generations of discipline and sacrifice. Polishing the sword was not a chore but a ritual. With slow, deliberate movements, the samurai unwraps soft claws and powders, carefully applying them along the length of the blade. Each stroke is silent and precise, as though he is tending not to metal, but to the very essence of his honor. The blade catches the faint light of a lantern, reflecting back a ghostly shimmer, like moonlight trapped in steel. The katana was said to embody purity, and its sharp edge was more than a tool of combat. It was a reminder to remain sharp in spirit, balanced in judgment, and unwavering in loyalty. The rituals surrounding the sword extended to how it was worn, how it was stored, and even how it was passed down. To inherit a katana was to inherit a lineage, the unbroken chain of one's ancestors. Yet for all its sacredness, the sword was not displayed frivolously. It was sheathed when peace reigned, only drawn when duty demanded it. And in that contrast, the samurai lived, between serenity and violence, between home and battlefield, between silence and steel. The presence of the katana was constant, yet it spoke softly in the background of daily life. Even as the samurai shared meals, taught his children, or walked through the village streets, the weight of the blade at his side was a reminder. Discipline must never waver, for the soul of the warrior was never truly at rest. As the centuries of the samurai unfolded, their way of life extended beyond the sword. While duty and honor guided their days, the samurai also cultivated a deep relationship with the arts, philosophy, and the quiet pursuit of beauty. To understand them fully, we must step softly into this side of their world. Imagine entering a small wooden room within a samurai household. Tatami mats line the floor, and a single paper lantern casts a muted glow against the sliding shoshi screens. On the floor sits a low table with a single brush resting on fine paper. This is where calligraphy, or shado, became both art and meditation. Each brush stroke had meaning, not just in its form, but in the silence that preceded it and the calm that followed. A samurai could spend hours mastering one perfect line of ink, steadying his mind in the process. In the garden outside, the philosophy of Zen Buddhism took shape in stone and water. Moss-covered rocks were placed deliberately, not to be perfect, but to remind the viewer of nature's balance. Sand was raked in deliberate waves, echoing rivers or ripples of wind. To walk through such a garden at twilight, hearing only the soft rustle of bamboo and the faint trickle of water, was to walk through the heart of the samurai's philosophy. Strength was necessary, but so was stillness. Tea, too, was elevated into ritual. The chanoyu, or tea ceremony, was not a casual act. It was a performance of grace, humility, and focus. A samurai might sit quietly while a host prepared the tea, each gesture carried out with precision, folding the cloth, cleansing the bowl, whisking the matcha. To the samurai, this was not mere drink, but an expression of respect, a chance to set aside the sword and embrace a moment of quiet human connection. Poetry was also cherished, especially the short and fleeting form of the haiku. These poems, often no more than 17 syllables, captured the essence of a season, a moment, or a fleeting thought. A samurai might write of the first snowfall blanketing the fields, or the sound of a distant crow at dusk. These simple words, sparse yet profound, reflected a philosophy that life itself was fleeting, fragile, and beautiful in its impermanence. Through these practices, calligraphy, Zen gardens, tea ceremonies, and poetry, the samurai found balance between discipline and peace. They were warriors, yes, but also philosophers of silence, seekers of beauty, and guardians of tradition. Beyond the walls of the samurai household, another Japan unfolded, one filled with merchants, farmers, artisans, and common townspeople. Their lives were quieter in fame, but no less essential to the rhythm of the ear. To contrast the samurai, we must walk into their streets and fields. At dawn, farmers rose with the mist, wooden sandals pressed into wet earth as they moved to tend rice paddies, bending low in shallow water, planting row after row with steady hands. Their lives were laborious, bound to the cycle of seasons. Rain meant life, drought meant hunger. Though they lived far from the prestige of samurai courts, their harvests fed the entire land, their work the unseen foundation of society. In bustling towns, merchants opened shop fronts, their goods displayed behind sliding wooden shutters. The smell of grilled fish and miso soup drifted from street vendors, mixing with the sharper scent of ink and paper from stationers. A merchant might bow to a passing samurai, knowing that while merchants grew wealthy through trade, their social rank remained low. It was a delicate irony, wealth without status, influence without honor. Artisans, too, filled the towns with their quiet skill. Blacksmiths hammered iron in rhythmic beats, shaping tools and blades. Lacquerware artists applied careful coats of resin to bowls that gleamed like still water. Kimono makers folded and dyed silks, their patterns reflecting the seasons, their colors carrying hidden meanings. The common people's world was built not by swords, but by these steady crafts. Evenings brought the hum of markets and festivals. Paper lanterns glowed warm against the darkness, and the sound of shamisen strings carried over the laughter of children. Merchants bargained, farmers exchanged news, and performers entertained in the open air. While the samurai studied philosophy and honor, the townspeople celebrated the simple pleasures of daily life: food, music, and community. This contrast painted Japan in two shades. The samurai lived by duty and restraint, guided by the sword and the scroll. The merchants and commoners lived by survival and trade, guided by the harvest and the market. Together, these worlds created a balance, one of order and one of vitality, without which samurai culture could not have endured. Imagine the late 1800s in Japan. The samurai who had once walked proudly through the towns, their swords shining at their sides, now found themselves facing change they could not hold back. The world was moving forward, and Japan opened itself to outside influence. The new government introduced modern armies, trains, and factories. The traditional way of life with rice fields and wooden towns began to slowly fade into something unfamiliar. For a samurai, the sword was more than just a weapon. It was his soul. Yet new laws declared that carrying swords in public was no longer allowed. The sound of clashing steel, once so common in the streets, disappeared. Castles that had stood for centuries became empty relics, their great wooden gates standing silent against the flow of time. It is important to remember that this ending was not sudden. For many families, life shifted slowly. A samurai might put away his sword, but he still lived with dignity, carrying the memory of generations who served before him. In towns, children no longer grew up dreaming of becoming samurai, but the stories of bravery and loyalty lingered in bedtime tales, passed from father to son, from mother to daughter. The rain falls gently on temple roofs as we imagine these final moments of the era. A time that once seemed eternal now became a memory, carried forward in art, literature, and the quiet pride of families who once bore the title of warrior. Now, let us drift into reflection. Cherry blossoms have long been the symbol of the samurai. Their brief but beautiful bloom reminded people that life itself is fragile, precious, and fleeting. In the calm of night, you might picture a samurai standing beneath the blossoms, knowing that just as the petals would fall, so too would his era eventually come to an end. But endings are not only loss, they are also transformation. The spirit of the samurai did not vanish, it simply changed form. It lived on in values like honor, discipline, and respect. Even today, echoes of the samurai way can be felt in Japanese culture, in the calm rituals of tea, the precision of martial arts, and the quiet strength of tradition that continues into modern life. As the blossoms fall softly to the ground, we too can let our minds rest. The story of the samurai is not a tale of endless battles or noise, but one of human life structured, disciplined, and deeply tied to nature and community. And as you close your eyes, perhaps you can feel the rhythm of that life, steady as footsteps on a wooden bridge, gentle as rain upon the rooftops, eternal as the mountains beyond the horizon. The samurai era has ended, but its story remains, soothing us into stillness.